Good evening, everybody. Hello there. Thank you so much all for coming in on this challenging evening. And let's keep it democratically what it has to be, but as short as possible so that we don't all go home like Captain Scott. Good evening. Happy New Year. Welcome to East Devon District Council's Cabinet meeting on the 8th of January 2025. Captain Scott didn't get home, did he? I'm your chair. I'm your chair, Councillor Paul Arnott. I'd like to welcome anybody watching the meeting via live streaming as well. We'll now start the meeting by Amanda doing a roll call of committee members here present.
Thank you, Chair. Starting with yourself, Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Councillor Hayward.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Hawkins.
Present.
Councillor Hookway.
Present.
Councillor Jackson.
Present.
Councillor Young.
Present.
Councillor Ledger.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Loudon.
Present, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Olive.
Present, thank you.
And Councillor Rickson.
Thank you, Amanda, very much. Agenda item 1 are the minutes. Sorry. Oh, Marianne. Are you present? I should explain to everybody that I'm slightly ailing with this virus everybody's got, which has left me pretty hard of hearing today. So if you can all pipe up into your microphones. Also, if I'm yelling, which is a possibility because I've no idea what volume I'm operating at, do point it out. Agenda item 1 of the minutes of our previous meeting. If anyone has a comment on those minutes from outside of Cabinet or from inside of Cabinet, if not, thank you very much. Those will be agreed and can be signed. Thank you. Agenda item 2, apologies. I see we have Councillor Ian Barlow, Councillor Paula Fernley. Amanda, do we have any other late apologies in?
Yes, Councillor Steve Gazzard and Councillor Mike Goodman.
Lovely, thank you very much. Agenda item 3, which is declarations of interest. I should probably have asked that.
Perhaps I should.
Should we do it again?
We won't do it again.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Go on then.
Cabinet, rather than go through everybody's names again, are there any declarations that you know of at this time? Councillor Hookway.
Yes, please. Agenda items 9 and 10. Effects NRI. I am a member of Exmouth Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any others? And can I take that to outside Cabinet to any members that are in the room, please? No? Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Amanda, very much. Agenda item 4, public speaking. There are no public speakers this evening. Agenda item 5, matters of urgency. We have one, as you all know. Agenda item 21, the English devolution white paper discussion. Agenda item 6, confidential items. There are none. Agenda item 7, we go to the minutes of the Scrutiny Committee held on the 7th of November 2024. There is a recommendation to Cabinet found on page 15. Would anybody like to make any comments on that from outside of Cabinet? From Cabinet? Do we need to vote on those, Anita? In which case, Cabinet, all those in favour, please. Thank you very much. That's obviously unanimous. Agenda item 8, the minutes of the Asset Management Forum, 2nd of December 2024. Do we wish to make any particular further recommendations on this item, or can we agree to move forward without specific recommendations? All those in favour of that, please. Thank you very much. Agenda item 9, minutes of placemaking in Exmouth Town and Seafront Group from the 10th of December 2024. Same exam question. Anybody wish to say anything about those, or can we move forward? All in favour, please. Thank you. Agenda item 10, the minutes of the Exmouth Beach Management Plan Steering Group, the 23rd of October 2024. Same question. Everybody happy to go forward without further specific recommendations? All those in favour, please. Thank you. Agenda item 11, More recently, the minutes of the joint meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committees on the 10th of December 2024. We have recommendations to Cabinet on agenda page 31. Do members wish to make any particular recommendations on this item, or can we agree to move those forward without specific recommendations? Anybody from outside of Cabinet? Cabinet, any comments? All those in favour, please. Thank you very much. Agenda item 12, minutes of the Cranbrook Placemaking Group held on the 18th of November 2024. Any particular recommendations, or can we move forward without specific recommendations? All those in favour, please. Thank you very much. Right, agenda item 13, the council tax base, 2025-2026. I'm going to have a sip of water before I say this. This is presented by Libby Jarrett, the Assistant Director for Revenues, Benefits, Customer Services and Corporate Fraud and Compliance. Bang, got it right. Libby, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. This report sets out the tax base calculation for the 25-26 year, which is a statutory requirement and a key component of the Council's budget setting process. Just to highlight a few points in the report, the tax base has increased on the current year by 2,695.52 Band D equivalent properties. It was 62,447 and it's now 65,142.52. The new properties on the valuation list has increased by 740 properties. For the previous year, it was 881. So we're seeing the growth, and if you look back, the growth on new housing development is coming down. The tax base factors in the new council tax premiums in relation to second homes that apply from April 2025. Although not specifically mentioned in the report, I can advise that the additional Band D equivalent properties from the new second home premium that have been estimated into the tax base is 1,919.61 Band Ds. For East Devon's element, if we look at the proposed potential tax income, that would generate circa 330,000 additional income. So turning to the recommendations, it is recommended that the Council approves the tax base for 25-26 at the 65,142.52 Band D equivalents as set out in recommendation 1. And the second recommendation is to approve the amount for each parish as set out in section 3 of the report, which breaks down the Band D equivalent by parish. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Libby. Any questions or comments from outside of Cabinet, please? From inside of Cabinet, Councillor Hawkins, please.
Thank you. I think it's just we need to note, obviously, going forward, the comment about the slower build-out rate that will have impact on future planning. But otherwise, obviously, this is essentially a maths exercise to tick a box. So I'm happy to propose the two recommendations as part.
Councillor Rickson.
My only query is, obviously, this is the year 2025 when different tax rates apply to second homes. But I believe there has been a report in the press that some owners are going for turning their properties into businesses. Have we noticed any sort of change of status with regard to council tax, which is going to affect our calculations?
Thanks, Marianne. Libby,
Otherwise, happy
please.
to second.
Thank you. So in answer to that question, I haven't specifically got the information in front of me, but I can look at it. But the rules around business properties moving into business rates have been tightened up significantly. So in order for a property to go into business rates as a holiday let, they have to actually demonstrate to HMRC that they are a genuine business, that it has been available and has been let for at least 70 days and is available for let for more than 140 days. So until they meet that conditionality, they cannot move into business rates. What we are seeing is that there are properties that are now being moved out of business rates back into council tax because they're not meeting that conditionality. And they are the value, it's taken a little while for the valuation office to get through all that work in getting that evidence to support whether they should remain in business rates or not. And we are finding that a number are moving back into council tax, and that is going back to April 2023, because that's when those new rules came in from. And that they will obviously go on to the second home charge unless they've let the property.
Thank you, Libby, very much. Any other comments? Forgive me, I couldn't hear. Sam, was that a proposal? Thank you. Anybody? Councillor Rickson seconding. All those in favour, please. Thank you very much, and thank you, Libby. I'm wondering whether you're on again. Yes, okay, so this is agenda item 14, the Council Tax Reduction Scheme 2025 to 26.
Thank you, Chair. This report relates to the Council Tax Reduction Scheme for working age. We're not proposing any changes to our scheme for 25-26. Each year, the Council must review and agree the Council Tax Reduction Scheme for working age households. I wasn't planning to go through the report in detail, but what I feel is important is to highlight a couple of points. Last year, we made a commitment that we would have, because we'd have had a full year's worth of data, we would be able to better assess the impact the changes that were introduced from 2023, and in particular on council tax arrears. Members, I'm sure, will recall that they made a number of beneficial changes to our scheme, with the biggest change was moving to 100% support to our lowest income working age households, whereas previously this was capped at 85%. This is because, members, you recognised at the time that the disproportionate impact of working age households on low incomes in council tax arrears compared to those households not on council tax reduction, and also when comparing it with pension age households where there is a national scheme which provides up to 100% support. So if I can draw your attention to section 4 of the report, where we've provided details of the arrears, and what you can see from the figures is when you compare the households in arrears in July 22, there was 19.7 households on CTR in arrears, and this was reduced to 13.69. So clearly, making our scheme more generous does directly demonstrate the positive effect these changes have had on those on low-income households, and those in income band 1, which are those on the lowest incomes, are no longer the highest group in arrears, which you would expect that they're now, because of them now not having to pay council tax. So obviously, even though the figures have come down, we still recognise that they're still disproportionately higher than those not on CTR, and when you also compare it with pension age households. And as set out in the report, we do plan to do more targeted work on those households in arrears, utilising support from our financial resilience team, as obviously we're still currently in a cost of living crisis, and it's still a challenging time for our residents. But other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but the recommendation is to approve the council tax reduction scheme for 25-26, which remains unchanged from the current year. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Libby. Anybody from outside of Cabinet? If not, Councillor Young, please.
Yeah. I seem to remember that other districts in Devon did a similar proposal last year. I wonder how they've compared with our experience over the year, and are there any districts that are not using this system?
Can I just clarify, when you say the system, do you mean those that have moved to 100% support? Because so not all Devon districts are on 100% support. Ourselves and a few of the others have. Teambridge was always on 100% support when the national scheme changed back in 2013. We haven't got comparable data in terms of our arrears. Obviously, we've done quite a sort of a detailed sort of drilling down on that data, so we haven't got comparable figures. in order to see how their arrears figures compare with ours. What we do know is as a East Devon Authority, we have really good high collection rates, highest, top 4% nationally in the country, and obviously, but that covers all households, and our arrears are proportionately lower compared to many of the other authorities. So in answer to your question, direct question, I haven't got any comparable data on the arrears.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else wish to ask any questions? Councillor Hawkins, please.
Sorry, it's just an observation, really. I think the sentence at 5.1 is probably a real testament to the 100% scheme, the fact that the households have managed to return to employment and no longer require support from the CTR scheme. So it's just showing that it's not, in probably what's a difficult time, not allowed council tax to become something adding to the issues. Libby's made the great point that obviously there is still targeted work being done, so it's probably a plead to, I'm sure many people are watching online, but if there is anybody that does feel they need the help or know that people do, obviously be in touch with our finance resilience team. This scheme is there to help those that really need it. Otherwise, I'd be happy to propose the recommendations. But
Thank you, said the finance portfolio holder, so that might be worth us putting out actually as a quote, perhaps, for just in case the whole of East Devon isn't watching us instead of... is it Councillor Jackson, please?
I didn't have my hand up, but I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Let's go to a vote then. All those in favour, please. Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Libby. Okay, so the next two items we go to Andy. No, actually, yes, it's a later one. So agenda item 15 is the draft revenue and capital budgets 2025-2026, presented by our Director of Finance, Simon Davey.
Thank you, Chair. And I will go through in a bit of detail, if that's okay, members. Sorry, you're doing so well so far, Chair. But, so this report presents the draft revenue and capital budgets for 25-26 for adoption by Cabinet before it goes out to joint overview and scrutiny committees and then the Housing Review Board. Their recommendations will come back to Cabinet for you to make your final recommendations to Council regarding setting the budget and council tax. This report was compiled before we knew the outcome of the local government finance settlement, which was on the 18th of December. But I can confirm the numbers within it, although there were some pluses and minuses, overall is not materially different. So there's no different recommendations being made, no material changes to the budgets presented in this draft report for you. The one surprise was in connection with national insurance. So you'll be aware that significant increases in national insurance from next year. Statement came out that local authorities' direct employees would be covered for that increase. We don't, in the settlement that came out on the 18th, were no numbers for individual authorities, but the methodology was included within the settlement. When you take that methodology and run it through our local numbers, we're only getting back about a third of what we're paying out. That's similar to what other authorities are reporting as well. So we're going to feed that back as part of the consultation. Other authorities will be doing the same, and I'm sure the LGA and District Councils Network, all sorts of local authority bodies are saying, hang on, in the policy statement it said we would be reimbursed and covered. The calculations aren't showing that to us. We'll know the final position in the, so we've been given the provisional settlement. The final settlement will come out early February, so we'll know the final position then. The numbers to us gives us a shortfall in the general fund of 369,000 and in the housing revenue account 64,000. So what we're suggesting at this stage, because it's so late on in our budget preparation and we were assuming that money would come in, and it still might to a degree, is that we take that from our balances at this stage. So that's the one surprise in terms of the report. If I can turn to, says he, losing his place. Bear with me. If I can turn, so the report is split into the three sections: general fund, housing revenue account, and capital. So for some reason I can't get the report. Bear with me. So if we turn to the general fund, which starts on page 54 of your report, as I've sort of alluded to, the financial settlement is a key part to the budget preparation. This report was written before that, but we did have some elements of the jigsaw puzzle, if you like. So we had the budget, the government budget in autumn on the 30th of October. So that gave us an indication of where we were in terms of what the government was looking at. At that point, no big surprises, and actually there were some messages over us receiving, or local authorities receiving, at least inflationary increases in the settlement. So that's what we were working on under that assumption. Then we come to the next part of the puzzle, which was the local government finance policy, which comes out before the settlement, and that was on the 28th of November. Within there was some worrying elements, I think, for us, in terms of it was talking about some initial steps in the 25-26 settlement to rebalance local government finance between councils. So it's talk about redirecting resources to authorities with social care responsibilities, but also towards where greater need was seen. So that was around, and what they were using as a measure for that was deprivation as a proxy. To fund that additional money that was going to go to those areas, they were going to abolish two existing grant schemes. One, the Rural Service Delivery Grant, which we currently receive money through, 265,000 in the current year, and also the Service Grant at 58,000. So the worrying thing in that policy statement were two grants that we specifically got money through as a district council were being abolished to help fund other areas. But the thing that was in there that helped, if you like, is there is a minimum floor calculation that always takes place, and they were saying that would take place, that compares your funding year on year, so you don't get a reduction. But it was looking like, at that point, that 3.2 increase minimum was disappearing into the ether, if you like. The good news, though, within the policy statement was the extended producer responsibility. So that was additional money paid to local authorities in connection with the collection of refuse and recycling. That was going to be paid as additional money to us. For us, that's 899,000 coming in as additional money, but there was the risk that that would be taken into account when it looked at all your overall funding to see whether we're better off or not. So that was the risk that I was telling members at the time in terms of this is additional money, but we may get penalised in other areas of the settlement. So to confirm in the provisional settlement, we did get the extra money. However, our other grants haven't gone up by what we assumed as the 3% increase, and the average increase, we're looking at 3% for most local authorities, but some have gone up by 6%. East Devons and other districts has actually stayed still. So the minimum floor calculation has come in, so it calculates between years and said, okay, we need to up your money so you get at least what you got last year, but there's no extra funding in there for East Devon. But we have got the 899 as a separate sum. So when you take those swings and roundabouts, whether that was the intention, but we come out basically the same as the current year in terms of next year's government funding, if you like. That's what we assumed when we put the draft budget together. So that's why I'm saying now the settlement has been published, we are there or thereabouts in terms of the figures, because that's what we thought when the 899 was going to be given as additional money. We thought we were going to be penalised in other areas, so we assumed a minimum amount. So if we look at the actual draft budget in detail for 5-6, on page 58 of your agenda, you've got a summary of the general fund position. So if you look at that table, you've got the various directorates, how much they cost us. If you look at the green column that runs down, that says 25-26 budget original, that gives you the various net costs of all our directorates going down. then the various funding streams coming through, and then ends up with the council tax requirement of 11 million. So basically you've got a balanced budget with your council tax requirement set there at 11 million. So we're proposing a balanced budget. What I would highlight, under that table, we've listed the main variations between years within the budget, and attached to the papers is the budget book. So you can go through in detail, look at the directorates, look at the various services that make up the directorates, look at the differences between years. But in the summary, starting on page 59, we've highlighted to you what the main variations are between years. So I won't run through those, that's there for information. What I will highlight to you on page 60 are some specific risks within the budget that I just want to sort of highlight. The first one is, I've discussed national insurance. So that was one area where the budget was assuming we would get full cover back, but at the moment the methodology isn't looking like that, and I've told you the numbers involved. Also, just to highlight, there were constraints in putting this budget together. Lots of pressures from services in terms of additional staff, some capacity, some skill gaps that we've identified as a management team, but we've had the constraint of producing a balanced budget. So it's just highlighting that there are pressures within our budget, street scene, engineers, and other areas that the executive team has identified. So we'll be working as a team as how we fill those gaps, but it will have to be within our staffing envelope, if you like, through the year. So we've had to curtail it in terms of producing a balanced budget. Page 61 looks at council tax. So the government have continued with the referendum principles. So for a district council such as us, the increase is limited to £5 or 2.99%. So for us, £5 is just above the 2.99 at 3%. So that gives you a council tax band for East Devon District Council of £171.78 for next year that's being proposed in the budget. And then the general fund balance, we're proposing that remains the adopted range of 4 million to 4.8 million. That is slightly higher than our calculation by the £500,000, but we're keeping that out there at the moment in terms of some of the risks that will cover off the national insurance if we do have to pick it up, and may cover off if we've got our inflation wrong in terms of the pay award. So I'm suggesting to members that we keep it above that £500,000 figure. Business rates is always a big area of income for this council. We talked about previously where we're above base in terms of the growth in our business rates. So the budget includes a figure of nearly 5 million where we're above baseline and is helping us balance our budget. Obviously in 6-7 now, we know that there's rebasing, but we'll bring papers to you to discuss that further when we look at the 6-7 budget. New host bonus, another big area for the general fund, and a significant reduction there. We're only getting 685,000 next year. That's a reduction of 400,000. And then a new element to the budget. In the background papers, you've got the fees and charges schedule that's linked for you. So the first time that we've actually produced for you all our fees and charges, you've got the current year listed and the proposed charges for next year that make up the budget. So as part of the budget process, you're also approving now the fees and charges for the following year. So just to highlight on page 62, in terms of the finishing off on the general fund, is the future budget strategy. Elements in there about the medium-term financial plan, elements about our financial sustainability model. But to be honest, because now the government are doing a fairer funding review, starting to issue details about the 26-27 and what the calculations might look like, we'll be bringing papers back to you very quickly about what the 6-7 position looks like. And also there's the consideration of local government reorganisation or review that's taking place as well. So we need to align those thoughts within those considerations for the 6-7 budget. So that's the general fund. On page 63, you've got the housing revenue account. You've got a lot more detail there than we would normally present. So we have gone through and given quite a lot of explanation to the various budget areas, just to give the transparency to that particular area of our budget. So running through on page 64, you've got the big income area in terms of the housing revenue account is rents. So we're governed there about how much we can increase rents. So it's CPI as per September plus 1%, which is 2.7% we're allowed to apply to our rents for next year. So that gives us 21.7 million in rental income. So that's an increase of 570,000 year on year. The next big area in terms of spend is repairs and maintenance. So you've got an explanation on page 64 about where we repairs and maintenance, the various areas covered there. And there's a budget of 7.13 million for repairs and maintenance. That's an increase of 50,000 on the current year. Supervision and management is your next big area. And within that area, you've got 9.1 million, which is a decrease of 290,000 on the current year budget. So remember, what we're comparing here is the revised budget that you set for the current year, 24-25, the one that we increased significantly in order to deal with the various issues regarding repairs and maintenance work within the housing revenue account. So the big decrease within supervision and management is around staffing savings that we've made in order to produce a balanced budget. And also we've reviewed all our recharges to the housing revenue account as well. So we've looked at areas where we can reduce our costs in order to meet the need for the repairs and maintenance and other areas within the housing revenue account. The only other area I want to highlight is there is a significant increase in financing for the housing revenue account, and that's in connection with what we put into capital in connection with all the works. So there's an increase of nearly $500,000 in the 25-26 financing position for the housing revenue account. As stated, you've got a balanced budget for the housing revenue account for next year. We've taken into account lots of new areas of expenditure that we picked up for 24-25, but also the good news is we're holding to the fact that we're starting to build up our reserves again within the housing revenue account. So on page 66, it shows we're making a £250,000 contribution to the housing revenue account. Page 67 gives members quite a detailed analysis between years of 24-25 against 25-26 on the housing revenue account. So I won't go into that, but there's quite a bit of detail there for members to digest. And then the final part on the housing revenue account is our longer term financial plan. Lots of details there about the work that's currently underway and what needs to be done. Again, discussions about the stock condition survey, and although we haven't been able to build our 25-26 programme on the stock condition survey work, we have been able to inform our capital investment has been influenced by a number of areas in terms that we picked up through the new management team, through the work we've been doing, and all of those are listed in 3.14 of the report. And 3.15 lists through our proposed capital programme for 25-26, which comes to a total of 18.3 million. And you can see the areas there that we're covering off. You've got the housing compliance, major repairs, so significant investment is being proposed in our housing stock for next year. The final part of the report looks at capital generally, and basically most of the work within there was informed by the budget setting and allocation panel. So those schemes that members have went through in detail, approved their inclusion within the budget, and now included within the draft budget that's being proposed for you tonight. So sorry about that, Chair. That took a bit longer, but there is quite a lot of detail in there.
Well, it's an excellent report, Simon. Seriously, thank you very much for that. Anybody from outside of Cabinet like to ask any questions of Simon or make any comments? If not, coming inside, Councillor Young, then Loudon, then Olive.
Thank you, Simon, for the report. As we're putting our rates up by 3%, what is inflation at the moment is the first question. And then the extended producer responsibility, which we assumed was going to be extra money, that now seems to be actually not extra money, but just makes up the difference now. Or am I putting words in your mouth?
You can wait for the next question if you like, Simon, to come back on that.
So inflation within our budget is running, we've estimated at 2%. It's in line with the Treasury, but actual predictions are higher than that at the moment. So it is running at 3.5%, around those sort of numbers in terms of future predictions. But the budget is running at 2%. It's an interesting question, the last one. I mean, the swings and roundabouts. So it is additional income, but our overall, so the extended additional money, 889,000 is new money. It is additional funding, but where we thought we were going to get extra money to at least keep pace with inflation, that hasn't come through. And I'm sure within the government's overall calculation, it's looked at that equation, is my take.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Loudon, please.
Thank you, Simon, and I think it was right and appropriate that you did spend the time to take us through this, because this is probably one of the most important things that we have to do in a year, isn't it, is to look at the budget. As ever, you started off very much the professional finance officer that you are by giving us a very upbeat approach to this, and then you gradually started to let us down as you went through and grounding us. And I've taken absolutely from what you said about the constraints and the risks in all of this, and the disappointment that is there in terms of what we thought we were going to be handed down from central government, and perhaps in the end didn't quite turn out to be quite what we anticipated. It's ever thus, isn't it? And the point that you made was, yes, we've got a balanced budget. It's in effect the same as this current year. And going to the point that Councillor Young's just made about inflation, that therefore means, in effect, we are running with a budget that is cut on year from 24-25 to 25-26. And we've got to recognise that. I think residents and businesses have got to understand that as well. And if we can maintain the good quality of the delivery of services that we seek to do, and we do, then I think that will be hugely commendable. But as you say, it's going to be a difficult year.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Councillor Olive, please.
Thank you, Chair, but John's just stolen my thunder, so no need.
Sorry, so come back on something else later. Councillor Rickson, please.
I note your comments about...
Councillor Rickson, could you perhaps bring the microphone under your chin a bit more? That would be helpful. Thank you very much.
I note your comments about reimbursement from government about national insurance. I believe I know the answer to this, but I'll ask anyway. Presumably this is just this year only, although it's an ongoing expense for local government. And also I note your comment about the commitment by government to the fairer funding review. We all know as a rural authority that traditionally we have been at the short end of the handouts. And so I presume that we are still living in hope rather than expectation that we will get a fairer settlement in future.
So yeah, noted the methodology for national insurance reimbursement, and at the moment only a third looks like it's being covered. That should be an ongoing grant and contribution, which is why it's not being done as a reimbursement directly from HMRC or something like that. It's actually being built into the grant system, which is why they've come up with methodology and a formula. So it should carry on, but what we'll obviously fight for is let's get the first calculation correct that then flows in following years, if you like. In terms of fair funding review, I think we've already got a taste in terms of where the pressures are and where government are putting their money. So it is towards social care. And deprivation, although we have pockets, doesn't particularly focus high when we look at us compared to others. So I think that's, again, where funding will be going under the Fairer Funding Review. The biggie, though, for us is that figure of just under 5 million for business rates that were above base, that I've warned the council about, scared the council about for many years, is now coming true. They are going to rebase. It will be rebased in 26, 27, and they're actually rebasing it right back. That's clear. So they're not going to leave, you know, not going to say we're going to do it by 50% or whatever. It is going to come back to nil. So that 5 million will disappear, but clearly there will be transition, and that's now coming out within the Fairer Funding papers, that there will be transitional arrangements in place. And I think it looks something like the first year, I think you'll get 2/3 of your funding, second year, third, etc. So the one element is it won't be a cliff edge, but I think we'll definitely be a lot worse off going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Easton. Thank you, Simon. Councillor Hawkins, please.
Thank you. I think Councillor Young and Loudon made great points around inflation and the increase we've seen, and it's worth noting, obviously, we've seen high inflation over quite a few years now when council tax hasn't married that. So there's actually quite a legacy issue already that we've dealt with, and it's probably quite an achievement to still deliver the great quality services with what we can do. And Simon's just touched on it as well. Obviously, we're looking at 26, 27, 4 million shortfall. 27, 28, 1.2 million at the moment. So we've probably got some very challenging conversations to be had in the year ahead. And we probably need to be aware of that now. It's great we can deliver something in April. Next year's going to be difficult. But closes on a negative point, doesn't it? But anyway, I'll propose a recommendation.
Thank you very much, PH. Anybody care to second Councillor Hawkins? Councillor Loudon, thank you very much. Any other speakers from within Cabinet? No, thank you. In which case, let's go to the vote. All those in favour, please. Thank you. And Simon, thank you to you and your team for an excellent report and for an excellent presentation tonight. It's very important, and we do need to know these things. Thank you. Right, we now go to agenda item 16, which is the East Devon National Landscape Management Plan consultation, which I think is going to be introduced by Andy Wood.
Thank you, Chair. So Council has previously agreed for the East Devon National Landscape Partnership to review and roll forward the management plan so that it covers the period 2025 to 2030. A series of workshops have been undertaken with stakeholders to help progress that process. That has now been distilled into a draft plan, and the report in front of you seeks endorsement for public consultation to be undertaken through to March in order that a final plan can then come back to Council.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions or comments from outside of Cabinet, please? From inside of Cabinet, anybody wish to speak on that? No, I'm just looking for the specific recommendation there. Oh, sorry, Councillor Olive.
I was just going to propose the recommendations for you,
Thank
Chair.
you, Councillor Olive. Anybody like to second that? Councillor Rixon, thank you very much. If we can go to the vote, please. All those in favour? Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. We then go to agenda item 17, which I think is also going to be Andy, which is about our culture strategy 2022-2031, the support. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. So this report concerns two requests for funding, one in relation to the Screen Devon project, one in relation to the Villages in Action programme. Hopefully you can see from the report how those projects are being considered by the Arts and Culture Forum, which has helped to refine those proposals, including in relation to specified key performance indicators. You can see also how they help to deliver the culture strategy moving forward, including supporting creative industries in the district. One amendment to the third recommendation, just to highlight, which relates to how the £15,000 could be met. As expressed currently, the recommendation relates to the general fund. There is the prospect now that we will be receiving effectively year 4 of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. There is confirmation that those funds will flow to the new combined county authority, which will then be cascaded down to each district. So a small tweak to that recommendation, just to say that if that requirement can be met in the first instance from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund Year 4, that would be in preference to the general fund, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. It's very useful to know. Councillor Hookway, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you, Drew, for your report and also for the update, excuse me. These are two really very important programmes. The Screen Devon scheme has significant potential to provide economic activity and boost economic activity. Making of films, large films, is hugely labour intensive. Excuse me, hugely labour intensive, and the aim of Screen Devon is to engage local people in building these, making these films, and also developing their skills across a wide range of different skills, so that we have these people living and working in Devon. When we launched the Screen Devon scheme, it was quite surprising the number of people who make films who live in Devon but don't actually work in Devon, and therefore there is talent already there, some Oscar-winning talent for that matter, and if we can harness this talent and get people working in Devon and get filmmakers coming to Devon, that can be very lucrative. Now, we've already had one Bollywood film which is operated. We can't say very much about that because it's commercial in confidence and so on, but that went extremely well and may bring another one. There is, and I use this phrase again, significant potential here. It really is quite important. And the second one, the Villages in Action programme, is a completely different, opposite end of the scale, but nevertheless very, very important. Villages in Action is a very successful programme that has allowed rural communities to engage and enjoy high quality cultural activities, and I pay tribute to Wendy van der Plank, the organisers of Village in Action, who's done a fantastic job over many years. So thank you for that, Chair, and I'd like to propose the recommendations, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. Anybody else within Cabinet like to speak on that or be happy? Yes, Councillor Hawkins, please.
Thank you. Simon, I think I just wanted to lean on, I assume you've written the financial comment, apologies if not. You almost come across as a bit not as supportive as some of the comments we've seen in the past are. So I just wondered if you could maybe expand a bit on it. And I think you've hinted at that members should think about the ROI on it. And I guess how would we actually consider that on a project like this?
Internal discussions today came forward with the priority for me would be to be funded through the UK Prosperity Fund, definitely. And I think that's looking more likely now with the general fund then picking it up. If members still wish to go forward, picking it up if it can't be funded through that route. So that helps financially. The point I was trying to make is you've just set a budget and then you're considering something else that's come forward, asking for another 15,000, which is coming out of the general fund. We couldn't accommodate it at the time, or timings weren't quite right, but also in order to produce a balanced budget, we had to be quite careful in terms of what went in, went out. So I'm just making that point. In isolation, it's quite a difficult thing for members to agree once you've agreed a budget for the year, but I think there's high chance that we'll cover it through the other grant method first. That's the point I was trying to make, Chair.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Anybody else, or anybody like to second what Nick has proposed? Councillor Rickson, thank you very much. Let's take that to a vote. All those in favour, please. Lovely, and that's carried. We now go to agenda item 18, the draft housing strategy, and we've got a report here. Yes, go on then.
Hello there, I'm not Catherine, Stark. I'm Tim Lawrence Oden. I'm a Housing Project Officer. Unfortunately, Catherine's off. Yes, so thank you, Chair. I'm here to present the draft housing strategy and seek approval to proceed with an 11-week public consultation on that document. The strategy is looking to reflect the broad and integral role that EDDC has in relation to housing, so not just focusing on our role as a social landlord, but also areas such as planning, environmental health, private sector housing, tackling homelessness, that sort of thing. We carried out some internal consultation and reviewed best practice from other areas to identify the 4 key priority areas, which are set out in the report. And then our strategy looks at each of those areas, setting out proposed actions that will help us achieve those objectives. And sitting alongside the strategy is an action plan, which will be a live document maintained and reported on periodically, potentially through scrutiny, but I think that process is yet to be agreed, but we've got time for that. So we've done some internal consultation already in the development of the draft, but along with the 11-week public consultation, we're intending to hold further focus groups with partner organisations and staff, and also with members, so that you'll have more opportunities to pass on your thoughts, although we're also encouraging members to go through the public consultation as well, so we've got that route to get any information and feedback. So once approved, the consultation is planned to run to the end of March, with any amendments made in early April, and then we'll be looking to present the final draft back to Cabinet via SLT, ELT, and the other committees in May time, with the hope that it will be published in July once it's gone through full council. So that's a quick summary. The recommendation is that members approve the attached draft for public consultation in January. I've noted the report said December at the end, but in January, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tim. Anybody like to speak on that from outside of Cabinet? Inside of Cabinet? Councillor Ledger, please. Thank you.
Happy to, Chair. I'm broadly happy with the strategy as is and happy to propose the recommendations as listed. There were a couple of questions from other councillors that I just don't think were covered off in the report. One was from Councillor Barlow in relation to some discrepancies with the figures with regards to population increases. And then Councillor Goodman asked regarding inequalities impact statement and why that's classed as low. So if Tim could just cover those off, please.
Yes, certainly. So, yes, Councillor Barlow had a question about the population percentage increase. He was right, we were wrong. So that's the figures we had were right, but someone had done. What a giveaway! Someone had done the calculations wrong when working out the percentages. So the population increase actually 13.8% since the last census between 2011 and 2021. With the equality impact assessment, we put it as low in the Cabinet report. I think the suggestion was that perhaps it should have been medium. Initially, it had been put at medium, but as I was carrying out the equalities impact assessment and taking some advice, the equality impact assessment, I was advised, should be done once we get to the final draft stage of the strategy rather than at this stage. And so from the point of view of this report, which is recommending the consultation, it's a low impact, effectively. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Olive, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second Councillor Ledger's proposal. I just wondered, slightly whimsically, why 11 weeks?
Yes, 11 weeks is so we can fit in with the various overview and committee sort of timetables for meetings. It gives us enough time to make all the updates at the end.
Okay, so we have a proposer and a seconder for that. No other speakers. Let's go to a vote, please. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's passed. Thank you, Tim, and thank you to Catrin as well and all of the team. We now go to agenda item 19, the Corporate Peer Challenge Review outcome, and I think Councillor Loudon, the portfolio holder, is going to present that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So it's almost a year since LGA colleagues came in as the corporate peer challenge team, and they came in and they looked under the bonnet at how we do things in this council. And that led, if colleagues recall, to a set of recommendations that came out from their investigations, which took place last February. Time flies, doesn't it, when we have fun? And it's worth noting that at the time, we were commended both as staff, officers and members for what they felt was good work that was currently then being undertaken, both delivering internally and externally. We then set about creating a plan to deliver the suggested actions that came out of their investigations, and this was received and adopted last summer by Cabinet and then by Council. And then in November, I presented to Cabinet a progress report on what I would suggest was seen then as very positive progress that we'd made in taking forward those recommendations and actions. So the team came back in November to then undertake a final look again under the bonnet at how we'd progressed, and I'm pleased to say that they were incredibly complimentary in what they said and what they felt they had seen and found. And again, they complimented staff, officers and members in the improvements that we had made. So I think at this point, and I've said it previously, but it's worth repeating, I want to record thanks to staff and officers and members for all that they've done, particularly over the last year, in engaging in this process and for taking forward the actions and the recommendations that have come out of the Corporate Peer Challenge team's investigations. I want to conclude by quoting from the feedback report that came in December following the team's return, because I think that in itself stands as testament to where we are. And they said, and I'll quote, and bear with me, "The peer team were pleased to note how much progress had been made by the council since the Corporate Peer Challenge had taken place just 9 months earlier. It was clear that EDDC has made significant progress, which was a positive reflection of the hard work that has been undertaken by the council. EDDC has embraced improvement, and this is evidenced in the action plan, which includes not only the key recommendations made by the peer team, but also includes progress against additional comments and suggestions that were mentioned in the Corporate Peer Challenge feedback report." I think it's important that we reflect upon that, and that is in the report. So I invite Cabinet to agree to the recommendation in front of you, which is that the report and the positive conclusions by the LGA be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. I wonder if it'd be appropriate for that quote to be extracted and put in the minutes for this item as well, because sometimes it can get lost, can't it, in a sort of report.
I think you're probably
if that's
quite right
possible,
there,
Amanda,
Chair.
to just pick up the little extract quote that John just...
I'm happy
But he'll
to
send
send.
it for
I'm
you.
happy to send it to Amanda.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot. Okay, anybody from outside of Cabinet wish to sing the praises of the council? Anybody from inside of Cabinet like to follow up? Anybody like to? Were you proposing, John?
I did propose, Chair.
You did, sorry.
I did propose, Chair, yes.
Thank you. Anybody care to second that? Councillor Olive, I'll go with this time. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. All those, well, actually, what are we doing? Are we noting this? I can't see the recommendation, forgive me.
To the council that they note the report.
Right, okay. All right, all those in favour, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, John. And from my perspective, just to echo what John has said, thank you to all members in the administration, all officers and all executives who put so much work into the first process last year and then the recent process as well. It's been incredibly important and has gone down very well. So we've now got an item, agenda item 20, appointment to the Devon and Torbay Housing Advisory Group. Andy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm conscious we're just about to come on to devolution 2.0, but this is very much devolution as is. So this relates to the establishment of the Devon and Torbay Combined County Authority, which is due to come into being, I think, in March. And you can see from the architecture diagram on page 2 of the report that are, in fact, 2 advisory boards that will feed into the Combined Authority, which will go on to become the new Foundation Strategic Authority in the new Parliament. So those 2 advisory boards, one relates to business, one relates to housing. This report relates to the latter and seeks endorsement for the portfolio holder for strategic planning to be the council's representative on that group. And just to say the kind of emphasis for why that portfolio holder is because initial work of that group is looking at the strategic pipeline, including accessing potential Homes England funding. And clearly with the local plan review coming forward, we are looking at that next generation of sites coming forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andy, very much for that. Anybody from outside the Cabinet or inside of Cabinet? Councillor Ledger, please.
Thanks, Chair. I don't think Councillor Olive's doing me out of a job here, so I'm happy to propose the recommendation.
Very good. Anybody like to second? Lovely. I'll go with Councillor Hawkins this time. Very good. All those in favour of lucky Councillor Olive? There we go. Congratulations. And welcome to, well, yes, welcome to the new CSA. I also have a role on it. Let's see. Talking of which, we now go to, I think it's our final agenda item of this evening, our extra item, the English Devolution White Paper, and back to Andy again, please, for an introduction on this.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, the English Devolution White Paper was published on the 16th of December alongside a ministerial letter which is included at Appendix A to the report. I think it's fair to say that White Paper represents quite a significant shift in policy and approach, a much more strident approach. 2 particular aspects to that. One is a move to a position of devolution by default rather than the deal-by-deal kind of process previously. And also with a strong preference, explicit preference for mayors as part of that kind of future governance arrangement going forward. Secondly, is around local government reorganisation, and very clear now that devolution and local government reorganisation are part of a twin-pronged approach going forward. And you can see from the, if you like, the structure diagram, we're moving to a position now of having a new tier of strategic authorities and also principal authorities with guidance around the relative population numbers for both. It's fair to say, as a second point, that the publication of the White Paper has precipitated a series of events, and you can see the, if you like, the stream of extraordinary council meetings that are taking place this week, and indeed the recommendations of the report are targeted at our own meeting tomorrow evening. And of particular significance, I think, is around the potential around future local government structures in Devon. And you can see within the report it touches on potential options in paragraph 6.5. Probably options 1 and 2 are mutually exclusive, but there are potential permutations as well that could flow with option 2 going forward. Finally, just to emphasise, obviously there is significant work bound up in this. It is of undoubted seminal significance for the authority going forward. But just the timeline in terms of this month, the County Council, and it can only be the County Council, needs to apply to the Minister to delay the May elections if that's what is chosen to do, and that has to go in by the 10th of January. There has to be some indication of who is going to be in the devolution priority programme this month as well. And there is an expectation of a further ministerial letter setting out the process and giving more detail around how proposals for local government reorganisation should come forward. And you can see an expectation of initial proposals through to March, Chair.
Thank you very much on that, Andy. Anybody from outside of Cabinet wish to? Yes, Councillor Faithful, please.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe this is for tomorrow rather than today, but I'll ask it anyway.
So Councillor Faithful, sorry, could you bring your mic a bit closer
Oh,
to
is it?
your to where you are? Thank you, and then just repeat that, please.
Are you having hearing problems? Are you?
I really am, yes.
So we've been running around like blue what's-it flies before Christmas with the local plan, and there's various other pieces of work. Unitary authority, which we will end up being whether we like it or not sometime, will that all go into one big pot with all the other districts, and just so it's, I wouldn't say it's a waste of time, but we'll just get something, you know, is that how it works, or will it have any value long term?
Through you, Chair. So, yeah, it's a good question. There's a very clear expectation, though, in terms of the guidance that work on local plans progresses at pace, and that's a very clear expectation. I do think that perhaps more widely, there are, you know, aspects that we will need to very carefully consider. For example, the work around the recycling and waste contract, which is time-bound, and we need to take an early view on, I think, about how that work progresses. And obviously, my fear personally is that, you know, devolution and these proposals could be quite a distraction, is likely to be quite a distraction, and we need to remain laser focused on progressing key areas of work as well, Chair.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Andy. Councillor Olive, please.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I'd just add some flavour to that. I forget whether it is Dorset or Somerset that has just started the process for their new local plan that covers the entire unitary authority. But up to this point, the local plans that already existed from the districts that preceded them have continued to carry full weight as the statutory development plan. So quite what the lifetime of the plan would be, we don't really know. But yes, it will absolutely have weight for a number of years to come, I would expect.
Thank you, Councillor Olive. Anybody else from outside of Cabinet? Inside of Cabinet, anybody would like to speak on this? Just looking round. Anybody? Councillor Hookway first, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll try to be brief. If I go on too long, don't remember to shut up. But I've talked about a single unitary authority covering Devon before in Cabinet. I think it would be an absolute disaster. It would be unworkable, and I don't think it would give residents any benefit whatsoever. And I think it's an attempt by county councillors to turn the clock back to the days of the 1960s, when they had 3 huge halls full with officers and typing pools and typing away and existing in that sort of environment. I think we need to resist that. I don't think it would be any good at all. We have moved on. Therefore, the idea of having 2 unitary councils covering Devon, I think, is a much better idea. What boundaries we use for that is I think, open to debate. The idea of district council boundaries, perhaps we need to forget for the future, and it will be different. People have talked about travel to work areas. That's also a very difficult issue, because both Plymouth and Exeter suck in people from huge areas around Devon, Cornwall, Somerset and parts of Dorset probably. Whether we need to think on something that is perhaps more geographically bound in terms of our unitary authorities, based around the fact we have Dartmoor sitting in the middle of Devon, I don't know. But nevertheless, I think we do need to be proactive. I do think we need to be very clear about our views, particularly about a single unitary council, which won't work. And I also think we need to be very clear with our residents about what we intend, and also some of the challenges that we are going to that we are being expected to deal with. And just as an example of that, today, Prime Minister's Question Time, Keir Starmer reiterated his promise of building 1.5 million new homes, and a significant proportion of those would be affordable homes. How on earth does he expect people to do that if we are distracted by this type of ill thought out proposal. You know, we do need to point this out to government. They are not doing this in the correct way, and the impact and the consequences to many people will be quite serious. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. I've got Councillor Hayward and Councillor Loudon. Councillor Loudon, would you like to go next?
No, please do, John.
Well, I'll go for Councillor Hayward first, I think.
Thank you. Obviously, there's an opportunity, really, this is a cabinet discussion. There'll be a wider opportunity for members to discuss this tomorrow, but I really have to agree entirely with what my colleague Councillor Hookway has said. There is no real precedent. In fact, there is only one precedent in the UK, and that's Lincolnshire. And Lincolnshire is one of the three areas that are having a lot of focus on them. I think the other is Lancashire. But Devon is vast. If you have one single authority of Devon to travel from Mead to Beer, no pun intended, that's 145 kilometres. It's a staggering distance. It's not ungovernable, but it's governed very well at the moment by the current setup. Devon, as it is on paper today, is a failing council. It's failing in SEND, it's failing in children's services, adult services, it's got a £200 million highways backlog, and the plan is to make them bigger. What, make the debt bigger? Do you want to make them £1 billion in debt? And all this is going to do is devolve services down to towns and parishes. That seems to be the issue, you know, because Devon are never going to take their hands off the reins. They'll want more money, more power to keep on doing the things that Councillor Hookway alluded to. And you will simply remove democracy. You'll remove accountability, and you'll push the costs and the services down to towns and parishes, so our residents will see no benefit. And that's what we're here for. We're here to provide benefit and services to residents and people who live in our district. And I am deeply worried that these ill thought out proposals from national government, most of whom have never probably been to Devon, they think, you know, probably seen it on the cover of a chocolate box somewhere. They have no idea, and it needs to not be rushed. And I think what's being proposed in our cabinet papers, and obviously we'll have a bit more debate, and I hope tomorrow, I think is a more sensible solution. A different way of providing key important services to residents without just ripping the guts out and actually making it undemocratic. And please don't even start me on cancelling elections. That's the last thing we should do.
Let's not start you on cancelling elections then, because I'll pick that one up, Paul. Just before I come to Councillor Loudon, it's a funny old thing, isn't it? 10 o'clock in the morning. So what's that? Well, I can't do the maths. Anyway, quite soon. Is that 13 hours away? Something like that. It is, thank you. Yeah, I think it's, yes. Anyway, Devon County are debating this, and the report that the councillors have to debate was published mid-afternoon today. What that report has indicated is that the very big talk that was being made by the county that they wish to see a gigantic unitary of Devon with Torbay using its unitary status. So in other words, a sort of Devon County Council on steroids, as people used to say. They've now seemed to dodge saying that in the report issued this afternoon. And what they're saying instead is that they wish to write a letter to government on Friday saying that they would like to play a leading role, the leading role in the process for Devon. Oh, and by the way, that's recommendation 1. By the way, recommendation 2, therefore, please can you cancel our elections in May 2025? And I do mean cancel, it's not postpone. Those elections won't happen. Now, the idea underpinning that, excuse me, I suppose, is that they can get everything up and running by May 2026. But of course they can't. Of course they can't, and they won't. So there won't be any elections in May 2026 either. And what you will end up with is a county council that is no longer representative, truly, of the current politics in Devon being given a Brucey bonus 2 years, a 1 year at a minimum, to just then write the manifesto for what comes up next. So I look forward to the debate at County Council at 10 tomorrow. I'm sure it'll go through because there's a majority there. I don't think it's impolite to say that I imagine that the Conservatives who run the County Council are concerned that they may not do so well in the county elections in May, and that's why they're keen on this. I may be completely wrong about that. But I think that point goes to some of the recommendations that we're looking at. Councillor Loudon, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you to Andy and to Tom Winters for the report, which I think makes for easy reading. It's not always something that we're able to get our heads around when we have things like local government reorganisations put before us. And I have to say, you know, a number of us have been around long enough to have not necessarily been in previous local government reorganisations, but we've watched them. And this one does feel a little bit more complicated, perhaps, than others of recent years. I may be wrong. It's not sought. I know the government was elected on a particular set of proposals in their manifesto. I have no argument with that, but we haven't sought it at all. However, we hadn't sought what we have had over the last couple of years, which has been in the background something similar going on in Devon and Cornwall to an extent, where we found ourselves as a district council sidelined along with all the other districts in Devon, because the county council had decided that first of all they wanted to throw their lot in with Plymouth, so you know they got engaged, then they fell out, and then I think the county saw Torbay and thought they're a better catch, so they hooked up with Torbay, and so they were looking at creating a super council anyway. And then we have an election that sort of sits there, and we're thinking, is it coming? Isn't it coming? And we anticipated it was coming down the track. What did it mean for us? Then we find, no, perhaps it's not happening in that way after all, and something else is coming along, but we don't know what, and you can all bid for things, and there's no guarantee what it will be. So we have had a degree of uncertainty for the last couple of years. And on the back of that, in the background, there have been conversations going on between different councils, between the districts in Devon. And Chair, you have chaired the Devon Districts Forum for the past year. And that, I believe, has also involved the Chief Executive as well. And it will obviously been supported, you will have been supported along the way by Andy and his colleagues as well. So what has happened since the 16th of December when this white paper landed was, and I thought Councillor Faithful was going to this point when he talked about running around like blue what's it flies, but he went to a different point. But quite clearly, you and other district leaders and chief execs and senior officers have had to spend an inordinate amount of time since the 16th of December trying to talk to each other, trying to make sense of what this all means, what it might mean for the future, and what is potentially best, and this is where it comes down to, for our residents and for our businesses. And I'm not sure that that's centre and front of everything we've got in front of us. So I say thank you to you and to Tracy and to Andy for the work certainly since the 16th of December and over Christmas and New Year. It has led us to Appendix B to this report, which is the joint statement from the 10 districts. And within that, that includes Exeter City Council. And I'll come on to them, and bear with me, I'll come on to them in a minute. And it is I think it is pleasing to see that we have got a joint statement that each of those 10 councils, including ours, which you signed on our behalf, have signed up to. It gives a statement of intent, a direction of travel. And that, I think, is incredibly important. It gives us something to build upon. We don't have much time. We have until Friday to sort ourselves out, get to where we want to be. And if you then turn to the report and you look at the recommendations, there are 4 sets of recommendations there. The first one there notes the white paper and its proposals. Fine. Secondly, there is a recommendation to council, and we'll be debating this tomorrow evening, that one, we endorse the statement that you signed on our behalf, and I'm very happy that we should do that. I think it's eminently sensible that we should seek to work with as many districts as we can in this difficult moment. It talks there about the potential for a mayoral, gosh, I can never say that, a mayoral combined authority. What shape that may or may not take, let's see. We've got our friends in Cornwall who seem to want to stay the other side of the Tamar, isolated. We'll see where that takes them. And then we talk there about encouraging our communities, partners and stakeholders to sort of become involved and for us to inform them as we move forward. But I think that there is something missing in the set of recommendations. And that is, I think, the way I'm reading what's going on around Devon at the moment is that apart from possibly county, nobody else is wanting to sort of show their cards. And I think it's time we showed our cards, frankly, at this point. And I think in doing so, I think we need to be proactive in showing some degree of leadership. So building upon what you have done in the past year, what this statement has done. So I would be proposing, Chair, 2 additional recommendations that would become recommendation 3 and recommendation 4. And I've shared these with officers, and I've shared them with Cabinet. But I will, if you bear with me, I will read them. They're not long. So the first one, which will become the 3rd recommendation, says that Cabinet believes that a preferred pathway should be explored which would create 2 Devon unitary authorities, one of which should be focused around the North Devon, Mid Devon, East Devon and Teignbridge district councils, along with Exeter City Council. Now, Exeter City Council is included in that, despite the fact that they may or may not be looking to themselves try and create their own bridge into the future. I think that set of 5 councils is a natural fit, as best as natural fit as you can have in these circumstances when you look at the map of Devon. And then I would propose a new 4th recommendation, that is that Cabinet believes that the people of Devon will be best served after the abolition of the County Council, because that is coming, by the 2 unitaries containing a city in each, being Plymouth to the west and Exeter to the east. And the previous recommendation I've just outlined included Exeter there, and that clearly then would leave Plymouth as the other major city in Devon, being in some way aligned elsewhere. So I would be proposing those 2 additional recommendations, Chair, which if Cabinet were minded to agree, would obviously go forward to Council tomorrow night and for Council to discuss and hopefully agree. So, Chair, I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. And just to point out after, there are other recommendations, although they're not bullet pointed, about delegated authority and everything, just to...
Apologies, yes, I haven't ignored them. Yes, they're there. I didn't feel they were quite as germane to the issue of devolution. They were more process.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Councillor Young and then Councillor Rickson.
Thank you, Chair. I don't see any alternative but to go with the government direction, or is it instruction? I read it more as an instruction than anything else. We also need to work geography-wise and not politically unwise. Therefore, a Cornwall and Devon, basically a peninsula, makes sense. Travel to work wise, road wise, everything else wise. We need to make it right first time because we won't have a second choice. And my biggest concern at the moment is there seems to be such tremendous haste in getting this done that we or others might go down the wrong road and then we'll regret it for many years to come.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. Councillor Rickson and Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I agree with the comments made previously by Councillor Hayward. My concern is that once all district council reserves have been swallowed up to pay Devon County Council's debts, what then? If this is meant to be a cost-saving exercise, I believe this will prove a spectacular failure, as precepts may well rise considerably as a result, and I don't think the public will be grateful for this. That's my only comment.
Thank you, Councillor Rickson. Councillor Jackson, please.
Not particularly keen on the government's direction of travel, I have to say. I feel that the larger an organisation gets, the more cumbersome and remote it becomes. And I think that with the reduction of democratically elected members that we would see as a result of the amalgamation of all of those authorities, that's a loss. That's a loss to democracy locally. It means that with a large organisation like that, it becomes harder to influence a different direction of travel for anyone who felt that they wanted to get involved with representing their residents in that area. And it becomes a larger job as well for anyone who is covering a wider area, which then in turn makes it less accessible for a diverse councillor pot, group of people, because as the job gets bigger, it becomes harder for people who are working or have families to engage in that process. So from a democratic perspective, I think it's a crying shame, but that seems to be the direction the government is going, and I can't see that that's going to change. So I think the proposals that have been put forwards by Councillor Loudon with his amendments here are the best of the options we have. It would essentially mean, rather than having one huge cumbersome organisation, we'll have two slightly less cumbersome organisations, but it gives us the best opportunity for people who want to get involved with local democracy to get involved and have an influence. Thank you.
I'm so pleased you've said all of that, Councillor Jackson. Sincerely, this is, and I should say this now, this is, when I just look at this council, and it's going to happen, but, you know, I don't know how many councillors of the 60 would be still councillors in a new organisation, but I'm really proud of this council and every single member, even the ones I don't particularly agree with. And it does seem to work well as a local democracy. And we're still a big area, East Devon. You know, that's the thing. And I don't think that is understood by government, but they really have set the direction of travel on this. And they've been going on about it since the LGA conference in Harrogate. I've been trying to wave the flag of alarm, really, and I'm proud that working with Tracy and with Andy, we have tried to take a lead role in this as much as possible, consensually with districts, including with our friends at Exeter as well. I should always point that out. I'm going to say one frank thing, which may make people worry. It's obvious that Plymouth are looking for a special status. Plymouth is a city of about 250,000, may not be quite that. The rule has been, we have been told over and over again in meetings that I attend, these slightly unrewarding webinars where you have to listen to what Baroness Taylor says. Who keeps saying I've worked in government, local government for 30 years, yeah, all right, you know, but you're really getting this wrong. And they keep saying a unitary will be 500,000 and it will sit within a strategic authority which needs to be about 1.5 million, something like that. Now, this route does suggest that could be achieved with Devon as 2 550, 600,000 and Cornwall, if they were likely to come in, at about another 550, something like that. I have a huge amount of respect for Plymouth as a city council. They are making a very great deal, and I understand why, of their nuclear capability that's coming through, the multi-billion funding that's coming through on military spending as well. But, I mean, forgive me, as far as I'm aware, Plymouth County Council won't be manning the submarines, will they? That's the Ministry of Defence. So how that's being used as an excuse to allow Plymouth to go, oh, now blimey, I'm a bit stuck here. I've only got 250. So I better nick a bit of South Hams and I better nick a bit of West Devon, but that's tricky because they might not vote for me. So I'm going to have to do some work on that. Now, I say this with real respect for Plymouth and for the leader, Councillor Tudor Evans. If we're not very careful, Labour will look like it has got this wrong from the outset, but in order to cover for its mates, it's going to allow some gerrymandering. And that is my reading of a real risk. And that is why I really endorse what Councillor Loudon has proposed as these extra amendments, because somebody, one of our councils, one of the districts, has to use John's expression, which I wrote down, show our cards. We have to, because we are expected to come up with some kind of skeleton. You know, we're told there's a letter coming to us in January. It's now going to be the end of January, you know, of course it is. They want some kind of homework in from us by the end of March about how, so we can't let tonight's meeting, we can't let tomorrow's meeting come through without us saying, well, how about we try this one? That doesn't mean that's where it lands, and it may align differently, but we need to try and set some sense of direction, because at the moment, everybody is caught in the headlights that were turned on full glare on December the 16th with the publication of the White Paper. Councillor Olive, please.
Thank you, Chair. How can I follow that? There are two relatively short things I want to say, because I don't want to preclude the discussion at Council tomorrow night. One, I'm a Lib Dem. I believe in devolution. This is not devolution. This is taking powers away from district councils and putting them in a remote, unaccountable, cumbersome unitary authority, which has no relation or bearing on the communities that it's supposed not only to represent, but also to serve. And in that respect, I think this move by government is disgraceful and I resent it. And if I vote for the recommendations tonight, I will do so in light of that. The second thing I want to say, and it's picking up on Councillor Loudon's point, the ward that I represent, Wimple and Rockbere, is right on the edge of what we in East Devon would call the West End. It's probably right on the edge of the area that Exeter would seek to annex, should they go it alone with their unitary proposals, taking a slightly cynical approach there. One of the reasons, therefore, that I support quite so strongly what Councillor Loudon has proposed is actually the area I represent has no bearing at all with Exeter. There's no functional community relationship there. Folks commute into work into Exeter, and that's pretty much it. We do our shopping in Honiton, in Ottery in Cranbrook now that Morrison's is open, thank God. I go to the dentist in Ottery. I go to the optician in Honiton. It's ridiculous. There we go. I've said my piece. Thank you.
No, well said, and another good plug for the Cranbrook Morrisons from Councillor Hawkins. Have you done it?
Supermarkets are available.
The other supermarkets are available. Have you been shopping there for nappies and such? Good, very good. I'm going to come to Councillor Loudon next then.
Well, several things. First of all, I would ask that, I don't remember somebody seconding my amendments, and I would hope somebody might. I was just reflecting upon...
Councillor Oliver was just...
Thank you. I was just reflecting on the point that you were making, Chair, about expansionism of maybe some other councils. And it led me to think that we have hugely criticised the expansionism of Putin into Ukraine. We may or may not criticise the incoming American president's expansionism potentially into Greenland and Canada and the Panama Canal. And I'm just wondering whether Tudor Evans sees himself quite in the same light, wanting to annex our nuclear fleet. But and forgive me for that cheap jibe, Councillor Evans. But my serious question is: do I also need to amend the recommendation so that that Cabinet recommends to Council? Because I would hope that because the reports that have come here and are going to Council are the same reports in effect with the same recommendations, do we need, given we've discussed this tonight, and if we come up with a set of recommendations, are we then recommending to Council tomorrow?
I'll just ask Anita to come in there on that point around the recommendations, John, to Council.
Oh, it does work. So Amanda actually was just suggesting that when we get to the recommendations, you've got recommendation 1 as is, recommendation 2 with the bullet points, which I think is what you meant. Recommendation 2 with the bullet points becomes 2 A, B, C, D. ABC, and then your 2 new suggested recommendations become 3 and 4, again with 2, 3, 4 all going to Council and 1 being in the gift of Cabinet, is what we would suggest.
Thank you. Does that make sense, John? Okay, thank you very much. Let's just double check that afterwards. It sounds like it's right to me. Give me a sec.
Sorry, I've missed what comes next. Grants delegated authority to the Chief Executive in consultation, and then the wording that follows that follows a further report in February. Receives a further report in February, providing an update becomes 6. So you'd have 6 recommendations in total. The bullet points, just for ease, become A, B, C, so that we'll always know what we're talking about.
So it's Grant's 3, the next one's 4, and then John's is 5 and 6.
John, do you want to come back on that?
Jay, yes, I mean, Anita fell into the same trap as I did, as stopping and not taking on the last 2. I'm just wondering, therefore, should it say at the beginning that Cabinet, in recommending to Council, then it goes on to say notes? Does that make sense? That Cabinet, in recommending to Council, then everything else flows.
You can the first recommendation that is a Cabinet recommendation. So Cabinet can note the report. You don't need to recommend that to Cabinet.
Okay.
To Council. So I'd leave that one as it is, that Cabinet notes the key proposals and then recommends to Cabinet to it's getting late, isn't it? Recommends to Council, then endorsement is given to and then you've got the rest of that. And then I guess as it's written there, as you say, I'd miss the following 2 at the bottom. So grants delegated authority becomes 3, receives a further report becomes 4, and your 2 new recommendations on the bottom? Or would you prefer them further up?
No, I think with, sorry, Chair. So we then recommend to council endorsement. So we've then got the 3 bullet points. Then we've got my 2 proposed amendments. Then we've got grants delegated authority, and ends with receives a further report.
That's fine. Slot them in the middle.
We're all in.
Yeah, makes sense.
We're all in sync.
Councillor Hayward, please.
Thank you. I think we're almost at the point of going to the vote. Something did just occur to me that from this, and this will probably be for another day, that if we are considering a mayoral combined authority between Devon and Cornwall, there will be some unintended consequences in that mayor will have to decide jam first or cream first. and this could lead to civil unrest between Devon and Cornwall. But a decision will have to be made. So for the people of Devon and Cornwall, be careful of what or who you vote for.
These things are complex, and I'm going to declare a heresy here that I do it the Cornwall way. But I always did. I know. Of course you put the jam on first. It was a mess otherwise. Councillor Rickson, please.
May I suggest they also need to learn to crimp their pasties on top?
Very good. Okay, can we... I think we're good to go to the vote, aren't we?
But including the 2 or do we need, including the
Lovely. We have a proposer and a seconder, so can we go to the vote on that? All those in favour, please. Thank you very much indeed. And that is the final agenda item of this evening. So thank you very much indeed for coming along, and good night. And thank you to all those who've been watching. And safe journey home.